Earthlings. Welcome to another episode of the 10 Laws podcast with East Forest. I'm East Forest, and this week I'm coming to you with a conversation I had with Poranguí. I really hope that's how... I've had to practice to say his name, and I worked with him in person, and I am to believe that the accent goes at the end. Poranguí. Poranguí. I want to say Poranguí, but it's not that. That sounds like Ferengi. It's absolutely not that, because he is a scholar and a gentleman, an amazing man. We crossed paths down in Boulder, Utah, in my hometown. And it was funny because he's someone who was popping up on the radar, on my radar, and Radha's radar for a while. Like several months back, someone had emailed us, and he was coming through town to do a show, and we were out of town. And then, someone else later on is on the road, and we're like, hey, you should meet this guy, Poranguí. And this went on like 5 or 6 times. And then eventually someone's like, again, hey, you should meet him. He's coming to play a concert down in your town with Dirtwire. So then it was like, well, shit, now we're going to literally bump into each other. So it was meant to be. It was awesome. And I think it was meant to be because I really clicked with him. And he's just a really down-to-earth guy who's doing some really amazing, honorable work. And I got to see some of his live performance that they did there. And it was really cool, very musical, very live, a lot of looping and creating it on the spot with instruments, and had a very strong kind of earthy element with some beats. It's cool stuff. So I wanted to get deeper into just his process and what he does. So we will get right into that. But first, a little business. Ram Dass came out, and today, at least when I'm recording this and when I'm releasing this, it came out at number 2 on Billboard on the New Age chart, which is cool. I mean, on the downside, it's number 2 behind the Piano Guys as number 1. And it's like, if you look at their press photo, that's all I'm going to say. Check it out, the Piano Guys. But number 3 was Sigur Rós and their Liminal Sleep album, which I'm a huge Sigur Rós fan. So, number 2, but with our colleague Sigur Rós right there next to us, that's pretty cool. So thank you for everyone out there who's streaming it and sharing it and buying it and gifting it and just sharing the movement. It's making a big difference. As you can see, it's making a big difference in other people taking notice and just sharing and spreading these messages that Ram Dass is putting out there. So thank you, and thank you for continuing to do that. I've really been enjoying the social media shares and what I see out there. It's just, I love it. So we're all in this together, and keep it up. The East Forest Retreat is coming up September 26th through 29th in southern Utah, in Boulder, Utah. That same place that Poranguí and I hung out and met. As he would tell you, it's an amazing place. So you can come camp, you can bring an RV, and we've got a few more spots on site. There's some bunk rooms and shared rooms, which you can take them if you want. They're awesome. And a couple spots off campus, just across the street, that are totally kind of luxury and private if you want that too. We can give you more information if you want that. Just hit us up at info@eastforest.org. I'll also be at the Vancouver Film Festival on September 9th in British Columbia. It's really awesome. I'm going to be playing music before the Becoming Nobody, which is the new Ram Dass documentary that they're doing a premiere up there. And I'm Loving Awareness song is the title credits song in the movie. So I'm going to go up there on September 9th, I think at 6 p.m. as part of the Vancouver Film Festival, and heading out to Burlington, Vermont in the middle of September. And right after that, I will be at the Love Yoga Fest in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. So all those have tickets. And then, moving in October, it's the Science and Non-Duality Conference. I'll be doing a ceremony concert there. All that's at eastforest.org/tour. You can review this podcast. It makes a huge difference, positive reviews, and you can do that wherever you listen to podcasts, especially on Apple Podcasts, where they kind of feature the reviews and the ratings. You can do that while I'm talking right now. But we got some new music coming out in the next few weeks. Several remixes are going to be coming out of the Ram Dass material. I believe the first one, well, it's kind of a secret. I can just say it. It's by Hammock. Hammock's an amazing band that mostly does some pretty dope ambient music, and they did 2 remixes. So that's going to be coming out first, and we have more We got some B-sides and more and more and more. Some exciting things in the works I can't talk about. And we also have some videos coming out, which are really, really cool. We've been having worked on for quite a long time, and it's been a beautiful process. So stay tuned on the social medias or the internets, the series of tubes known as the World Wide Web. Okay, let's get into this. This is Poranguí. Yeah, I just want to dive into this. I mean, You've been out there on the road for a while, and you've been doing a range of stuff. Now, I mean, you play concerts, obviously, which I saw, and you also do workshops, and you're kind of like walking your own path in this. I mean, what's it been like out there lately, trying to sort of, because you're walking in a world, as am I, where it's, how do we put this? You're inside a machine, a capitalist machine that has this inherent dysfunctionality, but you're doing something different. How's that friction working lately?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's how do you walk through, and interface, I should say, I guess, this experience of working in the machine, and without losing your own soul in it, and keeping your own integrity and the integrity of your art form and the mission, which, I think you and I share that kind of some similar common thread in that, in which, for me, music is about transformation, not really entertainment. That's really core to everything that I do. So it's been an interesting dance. We, in the last year, we finally have gotten a few team members, other people to help us, which has been tremendous and has just really helped to tilt the balance of things, because it was getting to the point where it was just my wife and I doing everything, and she's helped take on a lot of the things, which of course is insane in and of itself, because it's like this double-edged sword when you work with your beloved, because you kind of like, where do you help prevent the relationship and the work from collapsing into one thing? And so it's easy to kind of get very burnt out from that process. And at the same time, it's also amazing because you're traveling with your partner, and you have all these adventures together, and that's really exhilarating. But so that's been a dance in and of itself. So this last year we got some help, and these assistants have been incredible. Just, different people helping with different aspects. And that's helped us really up level a lot of the work we're doing. So right now it feels like we're in this interesting place. We're just kind of getting comfortable and dialed in with all of that kind of side of it, the very 3D logistics systems, how to get your email list all dialed and your social media and blah, 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 blah. So that part feels amazing to have that support. And I think the piece now that's really interesting to dial in is now working with a booking agent, is finding, how do you negotiate with people where they're very used to, and all the machine is geared towards selling alcohol ultimately. It's really what it's about. It's like, we're basically just the cover, the face to distract people while they're basically taking, getting wasted, kind of getting people really zombied out and taking their money. So all the money's made there at the bar. And so I've had a really clear message. Actually, it was about, I think it was about 8 years ago now. Yeah, about 8 years ago, I was doing some ceremonial work myself out on the land back in Sedona, where we live. And at the time, I was directing a 10-piece Brazilian band that I had built from the ground up, from a community group into a professional group. And we were playing a lot of my own arrangements, and we would play some covers, but it was totally through the lens of bringing the drums and how the drums can really liberate people and get people moving and connecting through their bodies. And so in that process, in that ceremony, I was shown all my ancestors, and they were weeping in this vision that came to me. And I saw like all of them, like all the lines of drummers and master drummers, all the way back to my most ancient ancestors were there looking in this line at me. And it was in a mushroom ceremony. And as they were looking at me, they were weeping, and they communicated to me that the sadness, the grief that was being felt all the way through my lineage of this art form, of this sacred art form of keepers of the drums and the medicine that is, and what that's really intended for, and how that had been, in a way, for lack of a better word, like being prostituted in this process of playing in these bars and clubs. And at the time, that was just where you play. That's kind of all I knew at that time. Those were the venues, if you will. I mean, you'd get the occasional performing arts center or something like that, which is great, but usually just for gigging and making sure all 10 members of the band are getting paid and keep doing the thing, you have to play in those kind of venues. And especially like Carnaval and like Brazil Fest and like, these different events in America, which are kind of like where you make your most money, is you have to throw on these big parties, and it's very much, drink caipirinha and get wasted and whatever. And I was just it's so out of like alignment for me. And I'd already had so much conflict, but this vision came. And so it was so clear to me. So from that moment on, I made the clear distinction where we wouldn't play those kind of gigs anymore. It was really hard. And
well, I mean, it's got to be hard just to make money with 10 people in a band.
Totally.
No matter how much drinking is going on. Yeah,
precisely. And so it was around that time, for another couple of years, that project continued, but it just wasn't happening. And like, it couldn't work like that. So that was when it really started to transition. And I let that go after, 10 plus years of putting my life, soul, and blood, sweat, tears into it, and really shifted all my energy into my solo project, which has been, around looping. And that's been really incredible, because when I did that, it was like taking all the knowledge that I have of all these different instruments and all the parts, and, really conducting a larger ensemble. And then me basically creating all those parts on the fly, and holding all that, and then arranging it, and then, composing and being the producer and the engineer all at the same time, which you're familiar with. And you do a similar thing in your performances. So it's crazy. You kind of suddenly you're wearing all the hats. Which is a blessing and a curse, of course, so it's been amazing though. So as a result of that, I've been able to take this project on the road, tour it, and now, be touring internationally. And it's just my wife and I, as I said, and now little by little, we're bringing on more members. But it's kind of funny is like, as I've been in this journey, I've been seeing like, now I can have more discretion. It's not that you can always avoid places where there's going to be alcohol present in some way, shape, or form, but it's definitely the majority is not. And so we're able to really work with organizations, with nonprofits, with people who we really believe in, movements that we really want to support, and bring our music there to the forefront. And it's not to say you don't go into the belly of the beast as well, which is where it's also very much needed. And so, some festivals and whatnot, we bring that, and it's really incredible. And I've kind of come to a new understanding and relationship with that commitment, that it's part of my journey is to bring these sounds, these frequencies into some of these places where they would never exist otherwise, and to bring that intentionality and to really create ceremony, if you will, in that sense of sacred space in these places where it's just really, really low energy, if that, you know what I mean, just kind of really dense. A lot of alcohol, a lot of ganja, you name it. Great example was just 2 years ago when I first did my first Sundance, and I came out of ceremony, and we'd been booked at a festival up in NorCal. And we were booked, I had opened up for Rising Appalachia, which were my beautiful sisters. And, we played this show up in Arcata, and the producer of the show, he saw us and he was like, "Oh, you guys are great. You'd be perfect for this show, this festival that I produce." And it's like, it's awesome. It's up in the Redwoods. We heard Redwoods and we hear like, "Oh, cool." And he saw us play with Rising App, so he gets our vibe. So we just assumed it was cool, and we said yes to it. So fast forward, I'm like in Sundance ceremony, getting out of that, like literally a few days after, we fly to NorCal to do the show that we committed to. And it turns out it's just a total alcohol scene on the river kind of thing, with like tons of weed and tons of beer, every kind of beer you can imagine. And it was just like, wow. So going into that totally open, and like my wound's still healing, just jumping into that, it was super intense. And then it was just like, okay, this is what we're here to do. And fortunately, the stage was in the middle of the Redwoods. And I remember just like connecting to those tree spirits and just like blasting these people with like the didge, right out the gates, and seeing people just like stopped in their tracks, like didn't know what hit them, like deer in headlights.
Yeah.
And it was really profound. A lot of people started weeping. There was all kinds of catharsis happening in that process. And so just kind of getting that message, like, okay, it's supposed to be there and do that. This is part of it.
Yeah, so, it takes a lot. It takes a lot as a performer to, when you're doing music that's about something truthful. Well, I don't want to say truthful, but like there's a certain authenticity that takes a vulnerability, and I don't know,
Yeah.
it takes more out of you. And when you're already fighting, like you're swimming upstream in some of these situations, I try to avoid them as much as I can now. And I think it probably comes off as being like a diva, and you're more just like, look, I'm just trying to set the stage literally so that it works. You know, that it's a good show, that everybody's getting their money's worth and it really connects with people, as opposed to like there's all these systems and things happening at the gig that are just fighting against what you have to offer, essentially.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but sometimes like in those festival situations, it may be like a really receptive audience, but it's so much more work to get there, and you're there for several days, and you're usually outside, and there's usually lots of different energy here and there, and systems are kind of this and that. It's more work than your average gig.
Totally.
And I mean, do you like going to festivals? Do you like playing them, or does it jazz you up, or does it feel kind of like a drain?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it really depends on the festival. We literally just drove out yesterday out of Beloved, which, is a festival that probably one of my favorites in the whole world. I mean, it's an incredible festival that has been kept small, under, about 3,000 or less people. And it's held here in the forest, near heading out towards the coast outside past Eugene.
Yeah, I went there a couple years ago. I played something there. I think it was at, they had like a healing stage.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me though, this festival of them, like I left there feeling more charged, which is pretty rare with festivals. It's usually pretty drained, but the vibe there, there's no alcohol at this festival, which is one of the things I really appreciated. The vibe is very, there's definitely psychedelics, but it's definitely not like it's very family oriented. It feels very balanced and grounded, if you will, relatively speaking. And the intention behind, the main producer, Elliot, he's an amazing human being, and his sense of aesthetics is really unbelievable. He curates everything with such care. The whole musical lineup is so carefully thought through, and the placement of everything. So you have electronic music, but you also have a ton of live world music, really soulful music. And so it's so eclectic, and people go there not so much with the idea of like, oh, I'm going there because this person's on the lineup. They kind of go knowing that they're going to see things that they wouldn't see otherwise, but they're going to love. And I really appreciate that. Yeah. It builds community in a whole other way. So for me, like that kind of idea is like inspiring. Like that kind of festival and concept of a festival, I feel is really, really something special. Yeah. But on the flip
optimistic.
side, yeah, I'm as much as I can be, there's definitely others that are like, wow, man, that was so rough. So, but this is definitely the exception to the norm, I guess, if you will.
Well, what's a miracle solution for you as far as how you'd like to interface with the world with your music? Like, how much would you like to be out there, or if at all, or how would you like to be creating it? And how would you like it to be resonating in the world?
Yeah, great question. I feel, what's the miracle solution? So I guess in an ideal world, I think I could see myself, playing 6 months out of the year would be like my ideal year. And then the other 6 months would be really dedicated, or at least 4 of those other 6 would be dedicated to making music and being able to just be totally, in the studio, in a place in nature, either back in Sedona in our home or, there in Boulder, with you guys, or, somewhere like that, where we are able to create with other artists and really get deep into the process and allow music to be birthed through, that otherwise is very hard to do when you're just constantly in the grind, on the road. And then the other 2 months would be just downtime, straight up like leave, go travel, go into retreat, do Vipassana, have that kind of deep recharge, go visit my mother in a monastery in Brazil, those kind of things.
Whoa. Your mother's in a monastery. She's a nun?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And my mom's a monk. She lives down in Brazil in a spiritual community there.
How old was she when she decided to become a monk?
My mom fully renounced, I think it must be now 8 years ago, but she's been in the community for nearly 20. Yeah. And she finally decided to, go all in and fully renounce everything, which was a tricky one, because my mom, my mother first came to the United States with me when I was little, when I was about, young. And I bounced back and forth with her to Brazil and back to the States and Mexico. And she finally kind of established herself, did a graduate degree here in the United States, actually in Navajo and Dene bilingual education. And in that process became very close to the tribes and subsequently became a sun dancer, which I used to go with her and support her as a little kid up into my teens. And so she has that whole background, if you will, where she was a pipe carrier and would lead ceremony and specifically pour, inipi sweats, temascal.
But that's Lakota, is it?
It's Lakota, and it's found in other lineages as well. But yeah, the inipi specifically, that is Lakota.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the purification lodge, like the temascal, as it's known in Mexico, is like also used by Azteca, Mexica, various other people have used that form of a lodge. And up on the Navajo Nation, it's actually also those ceremonies have been shared and very intentionally and been brought back. So where I Sundance, for instance, is up in the Four Corners, is up on the Navajo Nation near wheat fields. Little Big Medicine is the name of that Sundance, and it's held by the chief and his first lady are Dene, they're Navajo. So just to say, like, it's definitely more intertribal. A lot of it has been kind of sharing these ceremonies that have been lost, or people who have lost their ceremonies, and sharing them and bridging that connection between the tribes. So it's very much more intertribal in a way.
Sundance is intense, right? I mean, what drew you to that experience?
It's very intense.
Your mother, I guess. I mean, she took you into that world.
Yeah. She was my first introduction for sure into that. Growing up with her dancing, and she went through her journey with it. She danced for 8 years. It happens in 4-year commitments, and often people who are dancing, they dance their entire lives. It doesn't necessarily stop ever. They say for a sun dancer, 4 years equals one basically cycle, 1 year. So I'm in my first cycle right now, and I just came out of it just before, about not even 2 weeks ago. So it was very intense. Came in right out, like I mentioned, the first time I danced, I went to that one festival. This time we went to Arise and now Beloved, and now I'm here. And it's been pretty intense, pretty incredible. It's kind of what I've learned from the process now being through my second year is really how incredibly potent and powerful it is to put your entire physical being, your psychological, your emotional, spiritual being through such a process of difficult challenge, like literally on all levels. I mean, no food, no water, 4 days, dancing from sunrise to sunset, sweating 2 rounds in the morning, 2 rounds at night, sleeping out in the arbor, like out in the elements, and then going through that in your body, also all the preparation and going through a piercing ceremony, part of the ceremony. All of that is like, it forms you. I much equate it to like a stone in the river getting tumbled. It's like it literally knocks off all these edges and helps to smooth you out and form you into something more beautiful. And,
so you're
more
not,
and stronger.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you.
No. Yeah.
It's sort of like a vision quest in the sense of 4 days without food or water, you said?
No food and no water. Yeah.
And you're dancing, but then part of that time is also, you probably have to give us some background here about I know a bit about the Sundance and the piercing ceremony, but as much as you're willing to share, I think people might want to know the structure of this ceremony a little bit.
Yeah, it's pretty deep, but I'll try to give you the cliff notes. So it's essentially, it takes place over the course of 9 days, 4 days of preparation, purification, and then 4 days of the actual dance. And then there's a final day, which is when we do a chanupa ceremony, which chanupa is the peace pipe. And so we'll do that where all the dancers bring their pipes there. And it's kind of like a new year for us. We do that ceremony around the tree. The ceremony takes place in an arbor, a very large, like ring circle, if you will, with kind of a shade structure around the outer edge. That's for like supporters and families and the drummers, the singers. So they're in the shade. And then in the middle of this circle is, in the center, is often a cottonwood tree, which is our sacred tree that we harvest and we bring there, and it's what we pray to, we work with. It's basically this instrument that connects us to the divine there, anchoring the whole ceremony. And then through that course, we prepare our bodies. We're sweating, we're building everything, preparing all the grounds. And then we go through a whole process of a tree ceremony where we bring that tree in and we take down the previous year's tree and we tie up our prayers to it and also our ropes, which will be used subsequently for the piercing rounds. And then during the 4 days, once we start the actual 4 days of the dance, we essentially each day consists of multiple rounds where in the very first thing before sunrise, we sweat, we purify. We don't drink water, but we're sweating 2 rounds. And then we enter into the arbor. We dance multiple rounds. There's various different prayers that are done in that dance for different intentions, everything from honoring those who've passed on to doing healings on people, whatever is needed. That's where the chiefs and sub-chiefs kind of like direct us as the dancers. We're essentially the offering. We are the men. We wear skirts. It's like the tobacco. We're basically the tobacco being wrapped in the husk of the corn husk and being offered to the sun, to the creator. And so it's very symbolic, many levels that way. And each of us is in our own prayer. Each of us is there to hold prayers for all our communities, all of our villages, all of our families, for the entire planet. It's very much an ancient technology. And that's kind of going back to your question before of like, what made you choose to do this? It took me 26 years to finally say yes. My mother, had given me my pipestone to make my own chanupa back when I was 12. And, she told me, when you're ready, you'll finish it. And I wasn't ready for a long time. That stone just was left in my, in my belongings there for a long time. And finally, one of my uncles, who sponsored me to dance, we were doing a sweat at my dad's house and on solstice, and he comes out and to shake my hand and he's like, "Okay, so you're going to dance this year?" And before I could even think about it in my head and rationalize, I said, "Uh-huh." And I was like, what are you doing? And my wife looks at me like, "You're crazy. What did you just say?" And so, over the course of another year, I went back and to support and just be there. And yeah, it was time. Like I actually ended up drumming for the ceremony. They were short on drummers and sitting there with my brothers and sisters and singing, I really had this whole vision come to me that showed me, the power of this technology. And like, I could see the whole tree in the center and all the prayers being made. And like, there was this huge toroidal field coming off of the tree. Like the whole arbor was a massive amplifier for the prayers that were being sent out and to heal the earth, to support the earth. And subsequently now, having danced 2 years, like each year I get another more nuanced sense about this prayer and what it's about for me.
Why do you think it has to be so intense? I mean, it's so strong.
It's super strong. And it's a great question. That was one of the things. My mother, now being a monk, a nun, she's like, she didn't want me to dance. She was like, "You're crazy. Like, you don't need to do that. I already suffered for us. You don't have to go through this." Like, she kind of trying to protect her son kind of thing, and I was like, well, this is what Spirit's calling me to do right now. And for me, what has been true for me and what has been revealed to me in that prayer has very much been a sense about the importance of the death and how death is so central to all of life. And for life to be, there has to be death. Like understanding that connection, which often in our society, we're very afraid of. We don't even talk about it. It's almost taboo. It's the thing that we kind of, it's the last conversation anyone wants to have. And when you bring yourself into this kind of a ceremony, it's truly an embodiment of connecting to death, of really bringing the veil so thin by taking your body, your soul, everything through the eye of the needle and coming to the very brink of what's left, and it's spirit. And when you really connect to what is left and it's still there dancing in prayer, rather than in its mind thinking about, "Oh my God, how thirsty I am, how hungry I am, how hot I am, how miserable I am." It's like you transcend that misery by literally going and staying with your prayer and sending those prayers out to every single person, every being you've ever encountered along your walk and beyond. And they're all there with you. And that's what's incredible. You're just literally in that prayer constantly for those 4 days. It's the most powerful thing. And the thing I didn't finish telling you about the format is that over the course of the 4 days, we do multiple piercing rounds, at least one per day. And different dancers will choose, when they want to pierce. But like, so we'll do that. And the piercing round basically is one, it's kind of what's most sensationalized. People, when they hear of Sundance, they think of that the most, but it's really it's not that it's minute part, but it's a small part of the greater ceremony. But for instance, we will pierce, and that's when we tie up to the tree and we dance with that, connected to the tree, and then we break, and different people will do that in different ways. I won't get into right now, but, that's a really big part of the prayer. It's a part where you really, as a man specifically in this ceremony, comes out of very old lineage where it was historically a men's ceremony. Only nowadays the women also dance, and children sometimes dance too. They don't necessarily pierce, or if they pierce, it's symbolic. But the men doing the piercings comes out of, this is what I was taught by one of my elders, comes out of a tradition of men learning to honor the feminine and helping us to really be able to just experience directly and embody a little bit of the pain and the suffering that women endure to give life. And
wow. Yeah, that's an incredible way of looking at it.
It's profound. And when I really got that, it really helped me my first year dancing. And I felt that immediately. Like the moment the piercings went into my chest, and I go to the tree and we pray, and then we dance four rounds dancing connected to the tree. And then we pull back basically to the point where the flesh breaks on the last one. And then they cut that flesh that's dangling there, and then we put it into a cloth and we bury it in the tree. We make it as a prayer and offering. And in that moment, it was so clear to me, all the beings that I'd ever killed, all of the different relatives, everything from like cockroaches to mosquitoes, everything that any meat or any animal that I'd ever had part in, basically its sacrifice so that I could live, they all came to me in a vision. And I was just, weeping and just seeing them. And all I could do is ask for forgiveness and pray for them and honor them, that by me living in a good way, in right relationship, I'm honoring their death. I'm honoring the life that they had. And so it's like fully connecting that cycle, in a way that it's like, it doesn't always make sense cognitively or just talking about it. It's like, it's an embodied visceral experience of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, when you're saying this, it's a visceral experience in my body. I mean, I'm thinking about the first when I think about the men doing this, of course, my Western mind's like, oh, this patriarchal type thing. But then when you can say it like, so they can suffer in a way of honoring what women inherently go through as the progenitors of life.
Exactly.
Like women, they are the sort of the doorway into life. And through that is a lot of pain involved in that, in addition to everything else, like the pleasure and the joy. But there's a lot of pain, physical pain. And then when I think about everything you're saying about Sundance, I mean, first off, thank you for suffering for others in a way. But I just think how soft we are now. And honestly, I get filled with a lot of grief and dread that we're just fucked. It's like, how can we go through a passage as a civilization, individuals, at a time when things are never been more critical, and yet at the same time, things have never been more soft,
more comfortable.
More comfortable, and there's no one, very few people are walking into such an initiation or any kind of ceremony that just very few people, that really involves a fire. And I'm just, of course, part of me wants to say, you don't need the fire, or maybe, the fire is a choice. And then I'm just starting to think, I'm like, is it? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there's many different doorways.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I believe there are many different doorways, for sure. And ultimately, I think it is important that we go through some doorway. And I think everyone will in some way, shape, or form. I mean, it will look differently for everyone. And I feel there's something to be said about bringing some intention and actually seeking out whatever that doorway is for you, but one that is going to truly challenge you. And so I you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's like in our society, and I speak that from the place of living in the United States, Western American, European societies, we've lost our rites of passages. We don't really have that. Like the closest thing we get, right, is you graduate high school, you get a driver's license. So now you can go and get alcohol. Like those are like our rites of passages, and they're not guided well. I mean, maybe fraternities, sororities at a college, which is also very sick, very twisted. teaching all kinds of ways of being and how to, create brotherhood and sisterhood, but around drinking and around partying and around rape culture. And I mean, all kinds of things that are just really, we then see then taken into the corporate world, right? And these massive transnational corporations that are now in our leadership and influencing all our leadership. So it's very sick at a very core level. And it's not because it was like, I don't think it's a conspiracy. I don't think it's like a thing that was meant to be sick. I feel like it's been distorted through all the distortions over time. And what I feel is so important, and there's a hunger for this. And I say this because I see it happening in the emergence of like men's groups. I've been seeing lately a lot more of this work where men coming together and seeking out ways to be able to, like the Mankind Project, or there's a couple other groups here in California, for instance, the West Coast, at least, that I've seen recently that are inspiring. I'm like, okay, men getting together and actually talking about these things, working through these things as peers and as a support for one another, and creating rites of passage ceremonies for each other. And I feel like that, that's so needed right now in a big way. And beyond that, it's needed for our children, and helping like young men coming into their own, and young women. Inherently, I feel women do a better job of this just naturally. Women get together and process things and, have women time. But men generally, it's like, especially societally, we find it, it's through like, let's go to the bar, let's get drunk, let's go to a strip club or whatever, those kind of things. It's like, it's like where are those healthy, deep connections where we get the chance to really go through a fire together and with our brothers, and then emerge from that stronger. It's truly like the diamond, the coal getting crushed and formed into the diamond. It's like you need those experiences.
Yeah, and I agree completely that it's not much part of our society, certainly Western society anymore. And I also agree that in some ways the soul sets up what needs to happen. Like we face tragedy and problems that you can't run from that stuff. And it's sort of like the stage will be set. But nonetheless, I don't know, man. I mean, you sound a little more optimistic about, it just seems like this stuff is being pulled out of our worlds and our lives. And certainly in the circles we're in, we see more of it. But we're like a careening over a cliff without any elders, as a culture.
It's fascinating, right? And I know this in the music you've done. I think you've worked with hospice, right?
Yeah.
And in the work, it's like when we see kind of what are we doing with our children and our elders we're sticking into homes, and then our children we put into daycare. And it's like there's this total separation that's happened in our modern society where the intergenerational connection and communication has been really broken down at a core level. And I feel that's a big part of why there's so much sickness and dis-ease, societally speaking, is that we don't have like our elders passing on this wisdom of what it is to be old, what it is to face mortality. And our youngest children are totally like separated as well. So, and the working kind of adults, if you will, they're like in the middle doing their thing, and it's all been segmented. Whereas historically, right, it's all about grandma and grandpa hanging out with the little ones. They are the babysitters, and everyone's around the fire and telling story and making song.
Well, everyone's trying to get out there, and they may kind of, I don't know if I blame people as much as they're like, oh, I got to work, we're into this whole system of like, they have to go to work and then they have to have someone to watch the kids. And
right. Which comes back to what you asked me in the beginning. It's like, how are we interfacing this machine that we find ourselves in, that, we're some way part of co-creating? And so it's like, what is the roadmap, if you will, of helping to find the way back? I feel like it's not impossible. There are ways. I guess that's kind of, for me as a musician, as an artist, and maybe you agree with this, it's like, I feel that we're in a time to really create the soundtrack, if you will, to that migration, to that transition, as we find our way back to what is it to be in circle again? What is it to break out of the hierarchies? What is it to come back to the round table and to revision what it is to live in community and society, what it is to, in a gentrified downtown, you name whatever city, what's happening? How do we bring everyone back in rather than this alienation of everyone going to like their technology, to their light box, and just being so connected, at least on the surface, but actually more disconnected than ever. And how do we come back to that right relationship with fire, which I often talk about, for me, fire and technology are the same thing. All our tech it puts off heat. It is fire. It's an evolution of our fire. But if we come back down to the primordial relationship to us as fire keepers, that's our birthright as two-leggeds, as human beings, is we're meant to tend to fire. We're the only animals that have that relationship with grandfather fire. And so it's our responsibility to take good care of that fire so that we don't burn everything, and that instead we use fire to illuminate and to help the rest of the planet.
Well, all of our energy is from blowing shit up. It's combustion. It's all about burning. Yeah.
Right. Right.
But even our bodies, that's how we run. We eat food and create heat and warmth as warm-blooded animals. But you're totally right. It's kind of like a blind responsibility right now.
Yeah.
About, sort of how we walk on the planet. It just feels like a planet of young souls, or people who are just sort of like largely just not fully aware of their actions. I just heard something yesterday in the news that kind of personified this for me, where Donald Trump is making his own straws or something, because it's against the movement saying, like, straws are bad for animals and the environment and so forth. So instead of just saying I disagree, it's like, oh, then we're going to like make more and put MAGA on it to say like screw you. Like it's like it's beyond just being asleep. It's saying like, I'm going to make it worse just to stick my thumb in your eye.
Right. Totally.
It's just like ineptitude that's hard to understand, about just wanting to be mean, and just wanting to feel on top and feeling little and wanting to feel big.
Yeah.
And it's there's an energy of that going around on our planet, where it's like, it's hard to fight that when it's really just about wounds that people have.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that therein lies the actual conundrum to the whole thing, is that it's like fighting it, right? It's the fighting. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I really was shown to me through the Sundance, through ceremony this year, right now, just a couple of weeks ago, when I was out there, under the sun, it was as men, especially all of the men, there was like on the third day, there was a very long, like 3+ hour round. And I saw it, and everyone's energy was really going down. Like, it was a very hard round. Everyone to stay up and dance. And what it was kind of shown to me was that ceremony is so young. It's like the sun, all of the things, like all of it, you get to power through this thing, right? And it's like, you're dealing with all this pain and suffering, intensity, masculine, if you will, young energy. And in that moment, it dawned on me, it's like, what is being done is this alchemy that is inviting us as those dancers there as men, to actually be the water, and to actually really embody the yin element, the allowing, the surrendering, letting it be, and like not fighting it. And the moment that I was able to then drop into that and allow my body to just really surrender and let it receive fully the energy of the sun, my whole body shifted, my whole energy body like up leveled, if you will. Like I felt more energy rather than feeling like I was just being beat down. And just in the same way, like I feel with Trump, it's such an energy of this resistance, and then this like more of him. It's like almost, it's asking us all as a society collectively, like, how do we bring love to this? How do we literally love this in a way and bring compassion, that it's like, even if he's going to spit in our face after slapping us and after wounding us, it's like, how do we still bring our dignity and compassion and model that compassion the same way the earth has modeled it to us? Even though we pour all our plastic and trash into the oceans and into the planet, it's like she still grows all our nourishment. She still supports us every single day, right? With so much abundance. And so it's like that same wave, that like primordial mother energy of how do we love? And then through that love, there's suddenly some kind of space. There's some kind of little twinkle of transformation that's possible. Versus if we keep just fighting and just bring more masculine energy of like the mean, the father, the brute, the warrior energy, and it just creates more of the same. It's really,
I couldn't agree more.
Sense.
It's fire breeds fire. Yeah. It's like the solution out of it is never to resist, or fight, in a sense. I mean, Charles Eisenstein talks about that a lot. Sort of like, you have to kind of love our way out of it. Because, there's no the us versus them mentality versus more of a holistic We're all in the same thing. And it is kind of a hippie idea, but he's right. He's right that, we can't fight our way out of it. It's sort of like it's fighting the problem with the problem in a way. And, but it doesn't mean that it's not frustrating. It's
No,
frustrating that,
very much.
It's like you have to sometimes just face a level of ineptitude. It just feels like blind.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. No, believe me, if I go through all of the different waves of feelings around it, and like I said, it's so fascinating to me, like going through the ceremony has really shown me that, though. It's like you go through all this yang, all this warrior energy. Historically, warriors would Sundance before they'd go into battle. When they were fighting, the US military back in the day, like they'd be doing Sundance and then go out into battle. Like it was like to gather up all their medicine and energy and power to be able to go in and face their death, because they've already faced their death. So then it's like there's no fear left. And so it's really, it's so interesting, it's like, and as I go through that now, the prayer is different. It's not about preparing me to go out and fight. It's about preparing me to cultivate my inner strength, the deepest strength, like the deepest rooted strength that connects me to the source. And in that place, nothing can take my power. I'm fully inhabiting my entire being. And so there's no room for that. It's like, if that makes sense, it's like you bring them this presence that is,
And what parallels do you find with that and psychedelics, like a psychedelic journey compared to the Sundance journey?
I feel definitely there's a lot of parallel in various ways. It's interesting. I've had a long history and been steeped in ceremony and working also with plant teachers for many lifetimes, if you will. And I know that one of the things that has called me to finally say yes to the Red Road in the way that I'm walking it now and working with ceremony in this way is I've been called to Pour Lodge. And the way that we do that is to become a Sundancer, the traditional way. I mean, obviously people Pour Lodge, Rainbow Lodge, more like open like that, not a traditional Nipi. But I feel really called that this is the way to honor that road and honor where that comes from, is to go through this portal. And I understand why we do that, is that it cultivates the strength in you and the knowledge and the experience, just like someone who goes down to the jungle and does dieta for years and years and years before they ever even think about pouring a ceremony and taking that responsibility of safe passage and stewarding others in that medicine space, because it's a huge responsibility. It's like, there's a reason why you don't hand a scalpel to just anybody, right? Who's not a brain surgeon, who hasn't gone through all those years in the training and the hardship of like no sleep, right? Going through medical school and whatnot and the residencies. There's a reason, because when we go through those processes, we emerge, more refined and more masterful. And it's the mastery that's key in these processes. And so for me, that I really feel called to do that through Lodge and just using the elements, fire, water, air, earth, and then our spirit. Because when I see what's possible, the healing that's possible, just using just the elements, it's so deep and so profound. And we don't need to have something external beyond that, in fact. And I feel what happens oftentimes with medicine, plant medicine teachers, is that people will very much fall into like this notion that they have to always go back there. Like that's the only way to access these realms, or to really
feel connected.
Connected. Exactly. It's only through the teacher. And I often will remind people, it's just like a guru. You can't always sit there with the guru. You have to take those lessons now and live them, integrate them. If you're just always going back to the teacher, where is your own mastery and teacher? It can never emerge, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, what would you say to people who maybe are listening to this and the things that come up in their mind are like, look, I live in Kansas City and I don't have access to this, or for whatever reason that I'm just terrified I'm not going to be in a sweat. I'm not going to do a Sundance. What do I do? Is it, they might feel hopeless. How do they walk through the fire and access that water energy in this modern time on an individual level while we're swimming inside this capitalism, this dream? What do you say to that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, I feel like each
Not
person...
that I need the answer, but
yeah.
I'm just sure what comes up for you, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's a very big question that is totally unique to each individual, and what their soul's calling is, and you know, where they're coming from, who are their ancestors, what are they able to connect to beyond Christmas and Halloween advertising, you know, like really,
Christmas and
like,
Halloween,
you know, like what, because Christmas is like our celebration of birth of Christ, and otherwise one of the biggest consuming days of
is
the
it?
year. You know, exactly, is it? And then you have, of course, like Halloween, which is in other cultures, it's where we celebrate the dead. Instead, it's become another big, let's buy candy, buy a bunch of shit, and you know, and it's totally twisted. And Thanksgiving, there you go again, and Black Friday, right? All these things have been turned into consumer, you know, consumer events, happenings, right?
Not Valentine's Day, sir. That one is still
that
sacred,
one's still
purity,
sacred.
love. Yeah,
totally. So I mean, right, all the hallmark happenings of the year, and I guess what I'm speaking to that, just in that I invite whoever's listening is to tune into your grandmother and your grandfather, tune into their grandparents, tune into where, when you go back beyond what you were just socialized into as your, you know, what you're supposed to do at this time of year, what is your ceremonies that were given you by society, go beyond that, and invite you to do some research and to look into that and go back and find where those roots are. Because I trust me, they are there. They've just been forgotten. And I feel as two-legged as human beings, we are notorious for forgetting. We're super forgetful beings. We've forgotten so much. And it's the onus is on us to go back and to do the work and actually go find out, go sit with grandma and grandpa, even if they're there in that home and they barely, you know, can interact with you in the way you want them to, but go sit with them and glean some stories from them and a little bit of their history, because that narrative is part of the fabric that connects you back to your origin. And that origin is a very important thread. And it has, I think, a significance in unraveling the mystery of the medicine you need now. And I really believe that to be true. You know, it's like, what is that medicine? And it goes back. And sometimes we access that by sitting in ceremony. Because one of the masterful, amazing things about working with onguitos, los niños, you know, the mazatecas, or working with, you know, madre ayahuasca, you know, yaje, or working with, you know, Wachuma or Iboga, all of these teachers, they carry the ability to awaken us and tap into our cellular memory and help us to get out of our just, you know, our shallow memory. And that's something that they gift us with. And so in that portal, we'll often remember things and we'll have the visions. Now, there's other ways to receive those visions. You can go and you can sit in those 10-day Vipassana meditation. You're going to get a vision. You can go through the Sundance ceremony. You're going to get a vision, or, you know, Wamblicha and go do, you know, vision quest. There's various ways to receive visions. And sometimes you could be sitting in a factory job on a factory line and suddenly you receive a vision. Sometimes that happens too. You know, it's not that it has to be those things, but give yourself the space and time, whoever's out there listening, and give yourself the space and time to do that work. Don't just be complacent and comfortably numb, as Pink Floyd says. You know, that's really, I believe, the piece that gets us in our modern society. Capitalism is all about disempowering us, making us feel like we're no longer creators and authors, making us passive consumers. So just do what you're told. And it's totally a way to control society. I mean, it's obvious. It's like, if we're all just passively buying more stuff to try to fill the emptiness within us, then we're not going to be worrying ourselves with, why are things messed up? Why is Trump able to get away with doing the things he's doing? Why are various leaders around the planet right now doing this massive power grab? Then all of a sudden, we're actually know that that's not okay anymore. And when we wake up to that and we start to connect to our true authentic power, no one can take that from us. And that's the presence that then mobilizes the masses and creates the next revolution, the next transformational revolution, which I feel we're on the precipice of. And it's kind of interesting to watch and to be, you know, in it as an artist and traveling around the world and watching, like, it's just building right now. And it is happening. I believe that. what it's going to look like, no one really knows. I don't presume to know, but I do feel like there is a massive transformational event happening. And I don't think it's just, Kurzweil's singularity. I feel like it's much bigger than that. I don't think it's as simple as just the AI is going to take over, but I'm not a psychic. So I do know that right now what matters is what we choose today, like right now. Like waking up grouchy and like having a miserable day, I could choose to be a total a-hole to my loved one, right? Or I can choose, even though I feel all the stuff I'm feeling, to acknowledge it and then to choose love and choose to be kind. And if I can choose that over and over again, the more times I do, it's like working out a muscle. It's like, man, that presence and that compassion, that changes the whole game. And so whoever the puppet is up at the top there, Trump or otherwise, it doesn't matter what they do, because on the bottom of the pyramid, it's strong and it's full of love, overflowing. And that's my personal take.
Yeah. It's I always felt like with people talking about 2012 and the transformation that it's underway. It's just something that's generational. It's not something that we see happening overnight. And, it's happening, every moment with every thought we have. And these things that you're talking about that we've been kind of like sort of power grabs and money grabs, that's something that's been going on probably since forever. Going back to the Stone Age. And so it's really humanity growing up in a way. And I think the reason we have to is because now it's such a global society and we are interconnected. Our choices that we make affect the whole planet. And whether it's global warming or economics or nuclear energy and fallout, these things just affect everywhere. We no longer have the luxury of saying, even someone like Alexander the Great, of screwing up something over whole generations, or Genghis Khan. It's like even those things were absorbed, and now not so much. Like some of these mistakes pretty much ruin it all.
Yeah.
And so we're forced to say, okay, it's time to start. We have to now start making choices. Otherwise, this just isn't going to happen anymore. It's not going to work anymore.
Yeah.
And these are the reckonings that happen in our personal lives where you're forced to make change. Unfortunately, that's kind of the way it works with humans. Like we have to be pushed pretty hard to go through those rites of passages to burn away that which is in our way.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting how you do that in a Sundance, and you're kind of choosing to go into that fire and burn away the stuff that's clouding.
Yeah.
What you can't see.
Exactly. And in doing so, bringing the sense of what is it to be living the prayer? What is it to be praying, but also like to bring prayer into like your total being, like why you're on this earth. What is it to be driven by that prayer? I feel like I conceptually kind of understood that before, but it's a whole different thing to be living that on an ongoing basis. And the grandmothers, they'll say there at the Sundance, they'll kind of scold us, all of us dancers, and they'll be like, this isn't like a weekend warrior thing. They'll be like, you gotta live this every day. You can't forget, remember this tree, remember your commitment. And there's a lot to that teaching, It's like all of us, whatever that commitment is, it doesn't have to be just for Sundance. Like what is at the core? Are we just going through the motions when we go to work, when we're working our 8 to 5, whatever that is? Are we just going through motions, or how can we bring our presence, our compassion, our heart, our creativity, even to those mundane, apparently mundane moments? How do we bring the those peak experiences of sitting with the grandfathers and grandmother teachers, the plant medicines? How do we bring those peak experiences and integrate them truly into our day to day? I feel like that component is a piece that's largely overlooked and not really talked about and not really, embodied. Is like that integration piece.
Yeah, that's the integration. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But for yourself, I mean, when you hear that from the grandmothers in the Sundance saying like, this is not a weekend warrior thing, you need to like walk the walk.
Right.
How does that look for you? How do you bring it into your moment to moment outside that intensity of the Sundance?
Yeah, it's it's an ongoing dance. So for me, it's I mean, I can only speak to like right now, we get here to this place and it's like, no, all the things were not as we were told they were going to be. And, my wife is very kind of very sensitive human being. She's extra sensory, if you will, perception. And so she's really, disturbed when things are like not well in the field energetically. And so she's in a real bad.
I would have bailed.
What? Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, she would have like been like, let's go somewhere else. We're not doing this, kind of thing. But it's like that whole thing of like me is like, okay, how can I hold her with love? Just be here for her, not try to fix it, like the masculine like default is like, oh, I want to problem solve this and make it right. It's like, how can I just hold space? How can I just love her unconditionally? And then also hold my team, the other people who are with us and our crew, like also just support them and what they need. And just, doing all that with compassion is like, that's just walking the talk, it's like, how do I do that instead of being like, you know what, I want to just go smoke a joint and have alone time right now. It's like, no, like that's not the road. It's like, this is it. Let me face this. Let me hold space for this. So that's happened today, and how can we make it all work so I could be here on the podcast and, just juggling all those things is how I guess, where my feet, hit the ground and how I can really show up. And then when I get out there, and make my offering and perform tomorrow, for instance, with the full moon overhead, is how do I bring my full presence and in that presence, get out of the way. And I really mean that in a big way. Like for me, and I don't know for you, like when you loop, but for me, it's very much like, I don't have ever a preset thing that I'm going to do. Like I never think about, oh, I'm going to do this and then this and that, or I'm going to play this song. It's like, for me, it's very much a sense of I'm going to get out of the way and see what wants to happen. And it may be amazing or it may be totally terrible. And I'm not going to let that sway me. I'm going to just stay true to the intention of bringing through the most powerful prayer I can possibly bring for this moment, for this space, for these people, for seen and unseen beings. And that's been the guiding force for me. And as I continue to do this, it just gets stronger and stronger. And I'm so grateful for that, because at first I was like, wow, Sundance in the middle of festival season, that's just going to destroy me. I don't know how I'm going to even recover and be out here. And what I found is the opposite. Like I feel stronger than ever being able to come out here. I find that I'm able to resource from a place that I didn't even know existed, which has really been amazing. And I'm grateful for that, and it's humbling. It's like literally it just humbles you. And when you've been so humbled, like literally and physically, you kind of like, you really get like how strong we actually are. I think we as human beings do not give ourselves enough credit. It's like, maybe if you're a Navy SEAL, and I've heard this, I listened to an interview once with these Navy SEALs, and they're like, when they're swimming like these, I don't know, for miles at nighttime in cold, frigid water. And it's like, they're like, when you think you're done, you don't have another like, arm stroke that you could possibly muster. It's like you've only tapped into, and they've found this with these SEALs, like, I don't know, like 40% of your capacity. You have like all this more that you haven't even tapped into yet. But it's like, we don't ever push ourselves to those extremes to really know and discover the amount that we really have available to us. So yeah, that's been inspiring to me, just seeing that unfold for myself in this process.
Yeah. Well, I don't want you to burn out, man.
Yeah, definitely not.
I want you to keep, I mean, just being out there performing in all these different places and the traveling feels extreme to me, and adding in a Sundance into the mix, and holding what you're holding with authenticity and integrity. It's there's the other side of the yin and the yang, where you need to restore, and maybe you need to go take that time and smoke that joint, because you need the time to be like, no, this is time where I'm not just outlaying and giving, and I need to rebuild.
Yeah.
And I need to turn off for a bit.
Oh, totally.
And that's okay too.
Thank you, brother.
And I'm sure you do that.
No, and we do.
Go smoke the joint. Yeah,
go smoke the joint. I think right now, what like you were asking me before, like what's my ideal year? I feel like that's what I'm working towards. It's kind of like the goal right now. It's very much, we're kind of in the grind, if you will, in a big push right now. And it's been, it's been good. It's been a really wonderful thing. And we're being received by more and more people who we're able to share our music and our prayer with. and it's resonating with them. It was really powerful, like our offerings at Beloved and Arise. And I feel like right now we're in this interesting moment where it's like it's all hands on deck. And I'm very much, aware and looking on the horizon at, okay, there's going to be that period here in the winter where it's introspection time and time to recharge. And yeah, so definitely I'm holding that in a big way. And it's all hands on deck right now. So yeah. And then I guess what comes out of that is, how can I do those little things, take that time? What are the self-care that I can prioritize in that? Because you're absolutely right. You got to put your mask on first, and then you put it on, your children. So it's that constant, dance of how do you do that in a good way. I'm definitely still learning, humble student in all of this.
We're all humble students, man. And, I appreciate that we were able to cross paths recently and get a little time to chat. And, maybe we can do it again sometime. And I don't want to take too much of your time. Sounds like you guys need to you need to go smoke that joint, be alone, maybe find a sauna or something, get a massage, just be like, get a little Poranguí time.
Obrigado. Thank you, bro. Yeah, I'm grateful for the opportunity, man. Really, really sweet to connect with you finally too. And yeah, loved having that sweet little drop in back in Boulder, Utah there. So let's make some music sometime, bro.
Yeah. How do folks connect with you? What's the best way to link into your world?
Yeah, through my website, it's probably one of the best ways, Poranguí.com, Porangui. And we have a bunch of things there on the events page. The email list is the best way. We do the social media thing, but it's not in our power. That's totally corporate America running that machine there. So fortunately, the email still is very direct. So people just sign up on our newsletter through the website, and then we let them know when we're in their area and all the retreats and the offerings that we're doing. There's a bunch coming up actually this year, from Spain to Portugal to Australia, Hawaii, Arizona, Sedona. So people definitely look us up that way. And all our music, we love to share it through our Bandcamp. But we're on the Spotify and the iTunes and all that. But Bandcamp, as you know, is the best way that people can actually support us as artists. So yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, bro.
Well, keep doing what you're doing, man. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you too, bro.
That's what's up. I really appreciated talking to you, Mr. Poranguí. I'm sure we'll cross paths again, because there are so many times before where we were crossing paths. This music that you're hearing in the background is a track of his. It's called Canto de la Selva, and it's pretty cool. Thank you for reviewing the podcast. Thank you for saying hello. You can do that at info@eastforest.org. I hope to see you on the road. Check out the tour dates, sign up for the mailing list on the website, and then you'll know when and where we shall be. In the meantime, you keep walking your walk. Don't take any shit, anybody. But if you do, remember what to do. You do it with grace.
Gran medicina, clara y pura, cura y sana, limpia mi cuerpo, sana mi alma, así puedo